always there. Today on One, your daily dose of local affairs and social media commentary. Today on One, police brutality becoming a norm in Namibia. Youth protest removal of German colonial statue. Police reluctant to probe women disappearances, says protesters. And corporal punishment, no way to discipline a child, says the Gender Ministry.
Youth from all over Windhoek held a silent protest in front of the Ministry of Justice for those that have lost their lives at the hands of law enforcement. In the last decade, those that have taken an oath to protect the Namibian citizen are the ones that have killed unarmed and innocent civilians. We all remember 2014 when Frida Ndatipo was gunned down by law enforcement during a peaceful demonstration in front of the SWAPO head office. Or 2019 when unarmed Johnny Dwoseb was shot and killed just because the police could not detain him without using force. While Benisius Kalola was shot in the back at single quarters.
Our protest is also against police brutality in Namibia. Here we would like to bring attention, urgent attention, to the cases of Benisius Kalola, Frida Ndatipo, Odilo Motanane, Tuafeni David, Johnny Dwesep, Fambaune Talent Black, who were all murdered at the hands of Namibian law enforcement officers. The problem of police brutality is not separate from the problem of gender-based violence, because they are all enabled by patriarchal nationalism. This protest is therefore an act of solidarity towards global Black Lives Matter movement in the fight against racism, xenophobia, police violence, gendered violence, rape culture, sexual violence.
The Minister of Justice Yvonne Dowsab, who accepted a petition from the protesting crowd, reminded the protesters that Cabinet is busy discussing their demands.
You will be pleased to know that I'm just coming from a Cabinet meeting where this very issue was discussed. So the government is taking its role and responsibility very, very seriously. I have actually left the Cabinet meeting to receive this petition, because I think it's important. But what I was saying is that I'm here because the government of the Republic of Namibia is taking the issue of justice, the issue of racial discrimination, the issue of police brutality, the issue of gender-based violence very, very seriously.
The youth leader read out their demands to the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Defense and urged these ministries to take them into consideration moving forward in society.
We call for swift and transparent action from both justice and policing systems on all cases of police and military brutality. We demand accountability and justice for the lives that have been lost due to police brutality. We also call for the police and the law enforcement officers to develop a safer and friendlier policing culture. We will not be held hostage by those that are meant to protect us.
Yes, I want to!
We also demand abroad, this is our fourth demand and our last demand, We also demand a broad and holistic public re-education on gendered violence, rape culture, and the rights of members of the LGBTQ community for multiple stakeholders in our society, such as the police force. Because the police force is the frontline worker, they need to show more care and sensitivity when dealing with sexual violence survivors and other cases of gendered violence.
Let's talk about the coronavirus outbreak here in Africa. How do you get people to regularly wash their hands when water is scarce? How do you get people to work from home when majority of Africans work in the informal sector?
People are dying and suffering.
More importantly, how do you get a vibrant and dynamic continent to stop in its tracks? Welcome to The Breakdown, BBC Africa's COVID-19 special program, helping you make sense of the crisis.
Concerned youth gathered in front of the City of Windhoek's building to protest for the removal of the German imperial colonial statue of Kurt von Francois, which stands in front of the municipal building.
Our history has been whitewashed for too long, and we need to get to a place where we ensure that we rectify that history. This man is not the founder of Windhoek, and we're going to make sure that that is known.
I can't imagine that this is what you would want to teach your children about history, about this history, our history. I mean, Black Lives Matter. You don't think about our lives that matter, so then you must go.
It's a bad history. I think the history of Namibia is very, very clear. It has been filled with the blood of racism, apartheid, and so on and so forth. This is a symbol of that past, that bloody past, and it's not something that should be celebrated.
These racist acts and statements have been going on far too long, for a very long time. Only now, because of social media, some people are being exposed. We also went to school where we have teachers who are making sly comments here, sly comments there. Even our coaches where we grew up are making comments. These people have been allowed to do this for a very long time. And I think the problem was it became almost normal.
Kurt von Francois, who was a Schutztruppe officer and commissioner of the Imperial Colonial Army of German Southwest Africa, today known as Namibia, is credited for the foundation of the city of Windhoek on the 18th of October 1890. According to Hildegard Titus, one of the organizers of the protest, she started an online petition to call on the mayor of Windhoek and council to remove the colonial statue and replace it with that of Jan Jonker Afrikaner, who is not historically credited for being the founder of the city of Windhoek.
Kurt von Francois has been called the founder of Windhoek, even though he wasn't. It was actually founded by Jonker Afrikaner almost 70 years before. And ultimately, the statue was put up in 1965 to honor white power and white domination of this land, and basically say that claim like power to this land. So I was tired of that, and I started a petition on change.org, and I've had almost 1,000 signatures. And we're calling to the mayor of Windhoek and the city councillors to hopefully remove this statue and instead take it from here to the Alta Festa, where it belongs, as a colonial violent force, and instead be replaced with the statue of Jonker Afrikaner, who's actually the founder of Windhoek.
Today on One also spoke to Harold Akwenye, the City of Windhoek spokesperson, who said that they welcome the peaceful protest and that having a statue of a more prominent figure will be good for the city's image.
I believe a petition will be handed over to either the mayor or the CEO to take it further. So it shouldn't be only about the statue, but also about the Black Lives Matters movement. As I won't mind it coming this side also, as well as the tribalism itself. We should also look at tribalism. It's not only about racism, but tribalism also. So it's a good thing. Let's carry on as the youth. We are here to change our city itself, the look and feel of it. And if we can get a more prominent statue also on there, it will do good for the city itself. But let's just keep it peaceful, and let's be just organized in everything we do.
In 2013, former President Hifikepunye Pohamba also declared the removal of a German colonial statue known as the Horse Rider, which was described by the government as a recurring wound to those that were oppressed during the colonial era.
Last year, critics and audiences fell in love with the Big C.
So what next?
I, for one, am prepared to be wowed.
Oh, you be wowed. I'll be drunk. My name's Kathy, and I will see you now.
It is not okay for you to kiss my wife.
I don't want to feel better. I want to be better.
Some of the protesters that gathered in Windhoek Central Business District to raise their opinion on several injustices questioned why the Namibian police are reluctant to probe the case of Shannon Wasserfall and other missing women. Why did Shannon's father have to call the police to get information about his missing daughter? And why are the police here when all they do is fail at their jobs? Were some of the questions raised by one of the protesters who feels that Nampol investigators are not acting fast enough to solve Shannon's disappearance.
Shannon's father was saying that he has to call the police to find out information about his daughter. Why is that? Then why are the police here if they're not actually doing their job? All they want to do is police women's bodies and police people about alcohol, but they don't want to keep looking for these girls. Till when? When must we find another girl in a riverbed again?
The protester also feels that some police investigators have double standards when looking into rape allegations involving certain persons.
And it's double standards that they are not investigating people that are suspects. These rape apologists and these politicians that are being accused to be part of these things. We need to do better as people and educate ourselves. That's the number one thing that we have to do. We have to educate ourselves as to what we need to do as people to come together and stop these acts of violence.
One of the protesters say it's a shame for Namibia to constantly record incidences of rape. She wants the government to come up with effective laws that will ensure the safety of all women in the country.
It's one of the many days that we are going to be protesting to make sure that government actually gets on top of things now, because we are tired, we are exhausted. We cannot, our souls, our lives are exhausted. We cannot wake up every day in the front newspaper, 3 men molested, raped. Where is Shannon? Where is Shannon, guys? Where is Shannon? And it's been going on for so long that now we realize actually it's time for us to start bringing up these tests, these peaceful protests, and this protest that will follow thereafter to highlight our issues.
The protesters say this is one of many demonstrations that will occur if the Namibian government doesn't take their suggestions seriously.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of 700 Club Nigeria. Today on 700 Club Nigeria, a woman encounters inexplicable pain after the delivery of her baby. An interesting chat with the Israeli ambassador to Nigeria. Plus, we learn about the power within our spoken word.
My portion in the land of the living, help me sing. As for me, and my house we will serve.
The Ministry of Gender Equality and Child Welfare is urging parents to seek alternative ways other than corporal punishment as a way to discipline their children in the household. Executive Director at the Ministry of Gender Equality and Child Welfare says corporal punishment is illegal in the country and should not be tolerated, further asking parents to improve their parental skills. This comes after a recently released video on social media of a man beating a child with a belt.
We don't encourage actually corporal punishment. Already you know that it's even not legalized in the country. It's because of the nature of it. We try to intervene through our social workers, not only to talk to the child but also to improve the parental skills of parents so that they know how to deal with discipline issues at home, because there are alternative methods which can be used instead of resorting to drastic beating up of children. So we don't encourage it. We condemn it to the highest order, that corporal punishment should not be happening like that for kids. So what we are encouraging is that form relationships with your children. Most of us go drastic because we don't spend so much time with our children to understand them. But as I said, if you are struggling as a parent, even in these small towns, they are aware that we have this counseling through our social workers, where they can come in. Then we have family meetings just to advise them on alternative parenting methods. But really understand your children and work with them and try to understand, because there's always the root cause of a behavior. That if you're not close to somebody, if you look at the person who does some behavior you don't like, you just get annoyed and you want to resort to the maximum kind of discipline issues. So that's what we advise, that please know your children, treat them with patience, and also if you are struggling as a parent, get help.
No to Gender-Based Death and Violence Initiator says corporal punishment should not be allowed, as there are better ways to discipline children.
After watching that clip, I realized that what that man did was very, very wrong. That is not corrective punishment anymore. That is an outright abuse of that child. Yes, as a parent or relative or whatever, you could discipline the child, but it should be minimal, not to that point. How can you fling a child like that on the floor and continuously beat him? That's not corrective at all. I don't consider that as being corrective. There are ways you could collectively, lovingly correct a child. It's not necessarily by beating. At times you need to find out as a parent what is making this child behave the way that child is behaving. There must be something, and then address it. There are social workers who address behavioral problems with children. Take this child for counseling before it gets out of hand, because at times even parents are contributing factors to this. The children are growing up, they're misbehaving, parents are condoning it. It's fine, don't discipline my child. And then when it gets out of hand, you start crying foul. When you had the opportunity to correct this, and correcting is not by beating. There are ways, so many ways. Lovingly, you talk to the child, find out what goes on in the inner person of that child.
Today on One understands that the man seen assaulting the child is arrested, and the case is under investigation with the Namibian Police Force Gender-Based Violence Unit in Windhoek. The child has been taken to hospital for medical checks, removed from the guardian's house and taken into safe custody with a social worker.
From Cape to Cairo, Accra to Antananarivo, there are millions of people just like you trying to make a living to make money. And there's no magic way to get rich quick, unless you're Aliko Dangote. You're not Aliko Dangote, are you? No? Well, perhaps we can help you get a little further along the way. With BBC reporters all over Africa, we find the stories, the successes, and the startups that will help you make the most of your money. This is Smart Money.
In other leading stories, the United States government, through the World Food Programme, continues to deliver food assistance during the COVID-19 state of emergency. The U.S. Embassy in Windhoek previously announced $8.6 million in food assistance to Namibians affected by the drought. Beneficiaries and staff distributing maize meal, beans and vegetable oil are limiting the risk of coronavirus transmission by following strict precautionary measures such as social distancing, wearing face masks and using hand sanitizer and gloves. The Life-Saving Support Program, which intends to meet the nutritional gap of food-insecure families, is funded by the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief and the United States Agency for International Development. Implementing partners are distributing 10,000 metric tons of food to 350,000 Namibians in close cooperation with the Office of the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Health and Social Services. The food assistance program is scheduled to continue until July 2020. And First Round Namibia Health Optimization in a Pandemic Emergency Fund, HOPE, donated 15 fever screening thermal cameras to the value of 1.4 million Namibia dollars to the Ministry of Health and Social Services in an effort to strengthen the government's efforts of detecting any early infections, thereby taking speedy protective measures. These cameras will be utilized at high-risk points of migration between regions and borders, as well as crowded areas such as hospitals, to assist those on the front line in identifying potentially infected people. Established in April 2020, the HOPE Fund's immediate objective is to accelerate the scaling of Namibia's COVID-19 critical care capacity and is particularly focused on supporting the medical structures and resources of the country. First Round Namibia allocated an anchor investment of 10 million Namibia dollars to HOPE, funded by the banking arms of the group FNB Namibia and RMB. Welcome to Comments Corner, your daily dose of comments from the hottest social media pages. The National Housing Enterprise, NHE, has launched an exciting new housing development project across the country that will see NHE construct 335 houses. This is part of its ongoing efforts to empower Namibians through the provision of affordable and quality housing whilst continuing to fulfill its mandate. Henok says the project will inflate the cost of housing. Rudiger states that there is no use building these houses as people can't afford it. LJ Johannes says most towns such as Otavi, Tsumeb, Grootfontein and Otjiwarongo have been neglected in terms of housing. Cherwina, however, noted that empty NHE houses should be made affordable for people to buy before another project is launched. Rebiers questioned about incomplete unoccupied houses at the coast. While Hanelo says she has been on the NHE list for years. That's all from Comments Corner. Be sure to post your comments on our social media pages for broadcast only on Today on One.
You seem to be running a temperature, doctor.
I think so, nurse.
As ek na daai smile kyk, is jy nie op 'n ander planeet wat jy upset is nie.
Nie 'n planeet nie. Cloud 9. Beste aand van my lewe.
Dis nie reg om met meisies se harte te mors nie. Veral nie iemand soos Nosi doen.
Lekoshebi. Unkatso motseleng fela. Ritlabada. Angeke bemnandi. Pasop.
Justin is a criminal. He's the lowest kind of scum. I wouldn't let him near my dogs, let alone children.
Lesedi het jou help vlug. Daar's fout met jou ore. Ek weet nie eers wie Lesedi is nie. En as jy hier wil oorleef, onthou dit. Wil jy my op daai selfe lys sit? Gee jy enigstens om vir my?
Natuurlik gee ek vir jou om. Dis hoekom ek hier is.
Stop dan hierdie speletjie en bly weg van Lesedi af. Sy het gewen, Chris. Aanvaar dit net. Look, mekaar uit! No! Willem! Look! Willem!
Africa. The BBC's new weekly show will explore the big sporting issues and questions, like why Africans aren't winning medals in the pool.
I just think it's their mindset.
Meeting established and rising stars.
I could be the Nigerian first Grand Slam winner.
And at the heart of it will be you, the fans, with your passion, your opinions, your stories, and even tests of your sporting knowledge. Go beyond the game with BBC Sport Africa.
A look at the weather forecast. First, an advisory from the Windhoek Met Office. Hot to very hot temperatures with sandstorms at places will persist over the coastal areas for the rest of the week. Please do take the necessary precautions. The Namibia interior cold at first, otherwise partly cloudy and warm in the northeast, elsewhere sunny and mild to warm but hot in the northwest. Windy weather will prevail in the interior. The coast sunny and hot to very hot with sandstorms at places, and the wind fresh to strong northeasterly. Now we'll look at minimum and maximum temperatures across the country and beyond.
Just the way that we touch. Can we touch? Can I touch? It's just the way that we touch. Can we touch? Can I touch?
Is this the part we stop kissing? Got my fingers running down to your G-string. So addicted to your touch, Whitney Houston. Got my heart beating faster like a trillion. This is what I call magic. And what we have, other people wish they had it. I call it God's gift. This is special. Every time that we touch is full of passion.
It's just the way that we touch. Can we touch? Can I touch? It's just the way that we touch. Can we touch? Can I touch? It's just the way that we touch. Can we touch? Can I touch? It's just the way that we touch. Can we touch? Can I touch? Freedom Tana Boo, never Tana Day. Tata Kum like
World News, the biggest African and international news stories. Focus on